You think being social is hard, that it's something you're either born with or something you'll never have. You watch other people talk effortlessly, laugh easily, connect instantly, and you tell yourself, that's just not me. But what if I told you being social is actually easy? You've just been doing it wrong this whole time. You've probably told yourself this before. I'm just not a social person. Maybe you believe you're too quiet, too awkward, too different. So you start labeling yourself. You convince yourself that other people were born with something you don't have. But that belief is the real problem. Because the moment you believe you're bad at socializing, you stop seeing what's actually happening. You don't lack social skills. You're trapped in your own head. Think about what goes through your mind in a simple conversation. Before you even speak, there's a voice. Is this the right thing to say? What if they think I'm weird? What if I mess this up? And just like that, a normal moment turns into pressure. Now instead of listening, you're analyzing. Instead of reacting, you're calculating. Instead of connecting, you're performing. And performance is exhausting. Because when you're performing, you're not being yourself. You're trying to become a version of you that you think people will like. Someone smoother, funnier, more confident. But the more you try to be that version, the more unnatural you feel. Here's the irony. The people you think are naturally social aren't thinking nearly as much as you are. They're not running every sentence through a filter. They're not trying to avoid every mistake. They're just present. They say things that aren't perfect. They laugh at the wrong moments sometimes. They even get awkward too. But they don't stop themselves. And that's why they seem effortless. You, on the other hand, are trying to eliminate every possible mistake. You want every sentence to land perfectly. You want every reaction to be right. You want every moment to go smoothly. But that's not how human interaction works. Real conversations are messy. They pause. They stumble. They shift unexpectedly. And that's not failure. That's normal. But because you see those moments as mistakes, you try to avoid them. And the more you try to avoid awkwardness, the more aware of it you become, until even silence feels uncomfortable. Even eye contact feels heavy. Even simple words feel difficult. This is the trap. You're not struggling because socializing is hard. You're struggling because you've turned something natural into something controlled. And control kills connection. Because connection doesn't come from saying the perfect thing. It comes from being real in the moment. From reacting honestly. From letting conversations breathe instead of forcing them. The truth is, no one is sitting there analyzing you as much as you think. People are too busy thinking about themselves, their own words, their own image, their own insecurities, just like you. So the pressure you feel, most of it isn't even real. It's created in your mind. And once you see that, everything starts to change. Because now you realize, you don't need to become someone new to be social. You just need to stop getting in your own way. That's the real problem. Not who you are, but how much you're trying to control who you are. Socializing is simpler than you think. At some point, you started believing that socializing is complicated, that it requires confidence, charisma, perfect timing, maybe even a certain personality. But in reality, socializing is one of the most natural things humans do. You were doing it as a child, without thinking, talking, laughing, asking random questions, saying things that didn't even make sense sometimes. And yet it worked. You connected. So what changed? You didn't lose your ability to be social. You just became aware of yourself. Too aware. Now every word feels like it matters. Every reaction feels like it's being judged. Every silence feels like a mistake. So instead of just being in the moment, you start managing the moment, trying to control it, trying to shape it, trying to make it go right. But here's the truth. Socializing isn't about control. It's about flow. Think about the best conversations you've ever had. They didn't feel forced. You weren't thinking about what to say next. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just there, responding naturally, laughing without thinking, speaking without fear. That's what real socializing looks like. And notice something. There was no technique involved, no strategy, no perfect lines, just presence. That's why it's simpler than you think. Because at its core, socializing comes down to a few very basic things. Pay attention. React honestly. Say what comes naturally. That's it. You don't need to be the most interesting person in the room. You don't need to carry every conversation. You don't need to impress anyone. In fact, the more you try to impress, the harder it becomes. Because people don't connect with effort. They connect with ease. They connect with someone who feels real. Someone who listens, not just waits to speak. Someone who reacts, not rehearses. And here's something most people overlook. You don't have to create connection. You just have to stop blocking it. Connection is already there. In simple moments, a shared laugh, a small observation, a genuine question, even a quiet pause that feels comfortable. But when you overthink, you interrupt those moments. You replace them with pressure. You turn something simple into something heavy. And suddenly, something that should feel natural feels difficult. But the moment you let go of that pressure, everything becomes lighter. You stop chasing the perfect response. You stop worrying about how you're coming across. You stop trying to control every outcome. And that's when something shifts. Conversations start to flow again. Not because you became more skilled, but because you stopped interfering. That's the hidden truth. Socializing isn't something you have to master. It's something you have to allow. You already know how to do it. You've just been overcomplicating it. So the next time you're in a conversation, don't try to be impressive. Don't try to be perfect. Don't try to be someone else. Just be there. Listen. React. Speak. And let it be simple. Because it always was. What you've been doing wrong. You don't struggle socially because you're incapable. You struggle because of the habits you've built without realizing it. Small mental habits that quietly sabotage every interaction. The first mistake. You think too much before you speak. Every sentence has to pass a test. Is this interesting enough? Does this sound weird? What if they don't respond well? So instead of speaking naturally, you hesitate. And in that hesitation, the moment passes. The conversation moves on. And you're left feeling like you missed your chance. The second mistake. You judge yourself in real time. While the conversation is happening, you're watching yourself from the outside, analyzing your tone, your words, your body language. You're not just talking, you're monitoring, and that splits your attention. Part of you is in the conversation. The other part is in your head, criticizing everything you do. And when that happens, you lose the flow completely. The third mistake. You try to avoid awkwardness at all costs. You see awkward moments as failures, something to escape from, something to eliminate. But here's what you don't realize. Awkwardness isn't the enemy. It's part of being human. Every conversation has it. Small pauses, misunderstandings, moments where nothing comes out right. But socially confident people don't panic when it happens. They don't freeze. They don't overreact. They just move through it. You, on the other hand, try to control it. And the more you try to avoid awkwardness, the more pressure you create, until even a normal pause feels uncomfortable. The fourth mistake. You try to force conversations. You feel like you always have to say something. Always keep it going. Always fill the silence. So you push. You search for topics. You reach for things to say. You try to carry the interaction. But conversations aren't meant to be forced. They're meant to be shared. Sometimes the other person leads. Sometimes you do. Sometimes there's silence. And that's okay. The fifth mistake. You focus too much on yourself. How do I sound? How do I look? What do they think of me? Your attention is locked inward. But real connection happens when your focus shifts outward, when you become curious about the other person, when you actually listen instead of preparing your next line, when you respond to them instead of reacting to your own thoughts. And finally, the biggest mistake of all, you believe every thought in your head. When your mind says, "This is awkward," you believe it. When it says, "They're judging you," you accept it. When it says, "You're not good at this," you treat it like truth. But most of those thoughts aren't real. They're just noise. Patterns you've repeated so many times, they feel true. And as long as you follow them, you stay stuck. But the moment you start questioning those thoughts, everything begins to shift. Because now you see, it's not the conversation that's the problem. It's the way you approach it. You're not failing socially. You're just using the wrong strategy. Overthinking instead of expressing. Controlling instead of allowing. Judging instead of experiencing. And once you see that clearly, you can finally start doing something different. Not by becoming someone new, but by letting go of what was never helping you in the first place. The simple way to become social. So if overthinking is the problem, then the solution isn't becoming smarter, funnier, or more confident. The solution is simpler than that. It's learning to get out of your own way. Because becoming social isn't about adding something new. It's about removing what's been blocking you. The first shift is this. Stop waiting to feel ready. You're not going to wake up one day and suddenly feel confident enough to talk to anyone. That moment doesn't come first. Action does. So instead of waiting, you speak anyway. Even if your voice isn't perfect. Even if your words come out messy. Even if it feels uncomfortable. Because every time you act despite that feeling, you weaken it. And slowly, what once felt difficult starts to feel normal. The second shift. Say the obvious thing. You don't need clever lines or deep topics to start a conversation. Most interactions begin with something simple. A comment about what's happening. A basic question. A natural reaction. "This place is crowded today." That was actually really good. How do you know them? Simple, but real. And that's what makes it work. The third shift. React, don't rehearse. Stop trying to prepare everything in advance. Real conversations don't follow scripts. They move, change, and evolve in real time. So instead of thinking, "What should I say next?" focus on what's happening right now. Listen, notice, respond. That's where natural conversation comes from. Not from planning, but from presence. The fourth shift. Let awkward moments happen. Don't fight them. Don't panic. Don't try to fix them immediately. If there's a pause, let it be. If something comes out wrong, let it pass. If it feels a little uncomfortable, stay anyway. Because the truth is, awkwardness only becomes a problem when you react to it. When you try to escape it, you make it bigger. But when you accept it, it fades on its own. The fifth shift. Focus on the other person. Not on how you look. Not on how you sound. Not on how you're being judged. Shift your attention outward. Be curious. Ask questions. Actually listen to the answers. Because when your focus leaves your own head, you naturally become more engaged, more relaxed, more social. And here's the most important part of all. Stop trying to be interesting. Start being real. You don't need to impress people to connect with them. You don't need to entertain them. You don't need to prove anything. People aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for authenticity. Someone who feels human. Someone who feels easy to talk to. Someone who isn't trying so hard. And that's exactly who you become when you stop overthinking. So the simple way to become social isn't a trick. It's not a secret technique. It's a return. A return to how you were before you started doubting yourself. Before you started analyzing everything. before you turn something natural into something stressful. You don't need to build social skills from scratch. You just need to remove the pressure that's been covering them. And when you do, you'll realize something surprising. You were never as awkward as you thought. You were just thinking too much. The truth about confidence. Confidence feels like the missing piece, the thing you believe you need, before you can finally be social. You tell yourself, I'll talk more when I feel confident. I'll be more open when I'm ready. I'll be social when I stop feeling this way. But that's where everything goes wrong, because confidence doesn't come first. It never did. Confidence is not the cause of action. It's the result of it. Think about anything you're confident in today. At some point, you were bad at it, uncomfortable, uncertain, unsure of yourself. But you did it anyway, again and again. And over time, what once felt difficult became normal. And what became normal started to feel easy. That's where confidence comes from. Not from thinking, not from waiting, not from preparing endlessly in your head, but from doing. The problem is, you've been trying to reverse that process. You've been waiting to feel confident before you act. But that moment never arrives, because your brain doesn't build confidence through imagination. It builds it through evidence. Evidence that you can handle situations. Evidence that nothing terrible happens when you speak. Evidence that awkward moments don't destroy you. And the only way to gather that evidence is to act, even when your voice feels shaky, even when your mind feels loud, even when you think it won't go well. Because every time you step into that discomfort, you prove something to yourself. Not that you're perfect, but that you're capable. And that's enough. Here's the truth most people never hear. Confidence is built in messy moments, not perfect ones. It's built when you say something and it doesn't land, but you stay in the conversation anyway. It's built when things feel awkward, but you don't run from it. It's built when you show up, even when part of you wants to hide. That's real confidence, not the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. And the more you do that, the quieter that fear becomes. Not because it disappears completely, but because you stop listening to it as much. Eventually, something shifts. You stop seeing conversation as something to survive, and start seeing them as something normal, something simple, something human. And that's when confidence becomes natural, not forced, not performed, but real. So if you've been waiting to feel confident before you become social, stop waiting. Start small. Say something simple. Ask something basic. Stay a little longer than you usually would. It won't feel perfect, but it will be progress. And over time, that progress becomes comfort. That comfort becomes ease. And that ease becomes confidence. Because in the end, confidence was never something you had to find. It was something you build every time you choose to show up. You were never bad at socializing. You were just taught to overthink something that's meant to be simple. Connection isn't a performance. It's a moment. And the moment you stop trying to be perfect, you become real. And being real is what makes you social. If this made you see things differently, make sure to like, subscribe, and share. Because sometimes, the biggest changes in life come from the simplest truths.